Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's going on, Fantasy Champs? Welcome to part 2 of our running back ranking show. My name is Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon with me as always.
What's up?
What's crack-a-lackin'? I mean, you know, good stuff coming in. Combine has started, possibly finished if you're listening to this episode. And I'm trying to get the landscape here of all these rookies and all these young guys and start breaking down the positions and spend my nights in bed watching YouTube videos of JSN catch passes and try to figure out why everyone loves a slow butt wide receiver who plays the slot. Can't figure that one out.
Amon-Ra. Just saying.
Because he's the only body in Detroit that can catch a pass.
I mean, that's fair, but
Nah, he's a great receiver. I shouldn't trash on him, but JSN seems very much to me like.
listen, I don't get it either. When I remember watching Amon-Ra film in college, and I was like, "What's so special?" He's literally just like, he knows how to get open. He's a smart player, but like he has no special like athletic ability whatsoever. And he's like 5'11", 180 pounds. Like he's not an elite route runner.
Yeah,
like he's just kind of a guy. Yet in the NFL, he was able to just do great things. So I'm not saying JNX is going to be like that, but
yeah,
or JXN, whatever his abbreviation. JSN. See, I'm not even close. Where's the X come from?
Jackson, but there is no X. It's JSN.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, whatever.
His name is Jackson, Jaxon, I think. That's how you spell it. But anyway, I'm stupid. But see, we're still learning here. But we're going to talk about the top 12 running backs on this episode. It's part 2, so we're going to talk about the bottom 6 guys from 7 to 12 that we have. Next week, we'll jump into wide receivers, and the following week after that, we'll do quarterbacks and tight ends and talk about those positions. But this is always an interesting set of shows because it kind of shows you where Rick and I are on each particular player. Usually the top 5 we're pretty darn close on. But when you get to the bottom 6, 7, that's when things start changing and there starts to be a little bit more, disagreement between the two guys. But without further ado, we spent a long time introducing this rankings segment of shows, specifically the running back one on the last show. So without further ado, we'll just jump right in. But before we do that, check our website, fantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcasting platforms, please leave a review and share this podcast with your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, like, and comment down below any questions you may have for us. Ready to do this?
For us. Yeah, boss.
All right, let's do it. Where were we? 7? Yeah, 7. So we had 3 guys tied at 7. Nick Chubb was the first one. The second one was Kenneth Walker, so consensus 7. I have K. Walker at 6. Rick has Walker at 8, which I'm very intrigued by. I'm very interested in. If there is a running back that I want to rip my drawers off and call a breakout this year, it would probably be the Seattle Seahawks running back who had a really great year this year. But not just that, like, they run the ball. Seattle is like they pound the rock. That's what they do over there. So when you have the main running back on that team, like, I want a piece of that. Now, I don't know what the crap's going on with Chris Carson. I don't even know if he's alive anymore. I don't know where he is. I don't know if he's still with the team or whatever.
He retired from the NFL.
Okay, good. All right, Chris Carson's gone. There's no one else in Seattle. They're not going to try to find somebody else. So it's just Kenneth Walker. I don't know if Geno Smith is going to be good next year. I don't know if their offense is going to be good, but they got DK. They got a good offensive line. They got Kenneth Walker, and they had Geno cooking slightly better meals than Russ was. Slightly. So, but regardless of the situation, with Geno as your quarterback, Walker was having a great year. This is one of those guys that I'm going to tag as a breakout this year. Like, I think he is good enough pass catching and rushing wise to ascend into this year that category of, top 3 or 4 in fantasy football. So I think he has the talent and the ability to do that, and I hope he does, because I need another fun running back to talk about that isn't the 6 that we've been talking about for years. So I do like Kenneth Walker this year. I think he's going to be great. He will be part of my breakout list, and you could say he already did that, but I like him. So I'm going to roll with Kenneth Walker, but there is some risk still tied to that. I believe he dealt with some injuries early and midway through the season, so there's some stuff there that you got to deal with. So I think I think he like, if you want to talk about a player that has an extremely high ceiling but also a bottomed out floor, that is Kenneth Walker, which is why Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor, Austin Eckler, Saquon Barkley, and CMC are all ahead of him on my rankings. But I'm interested to hear why Rick has him 8. Because you got a couple of guys, obviously your boy, Nicky Chubb, ahead of him, and another guy that we'll talk about. But why you got him 8? What's going on? What's going on with Ken Walker? You afraid? You afraid?
Listen, I told you that anyone from after Jonathan Taylor, and even then I didn't feel great about Taylor. Anyone after like 4 or 5, I was like, I don't know what to do with any of these guys. I debated about putting Kenneth Walker as high as number 5, but I decided to go easy on him.
Okay. Make it.
I think he has, as you said, the breakout is there. He has a very high ceiling. He's going to be a workhorse with Seattle this year. We saw what he was able to do when he became the workhorse in that team. He had a great rookie season, and it's only looking uphill. The type of player he is, though, is very similar to Nick Chubb. He's a really good real-life running back, I think. He's a really good runner, and I think he's a good pass-catching back. I don't know if he's a great pass-catching back, but he should be good enough. I don't know if Seattle's going to utilize him in the pass-catching game enough. And to me, that could end up hurting what his ceiling is. And when it comes to just ranking them, I think I put Nick Chubb higher, and another guy we're going to talk about one spot higher, just because they're more of those proven guys. While Walker's still kind of more of a wild card, but I absolutely think Walker has the potential to be a top 5 running back this year. And if it came down to me drafting them, I don't know if I would take the other guy that we're going to talk about over Walker. So it's hard, but I just think that floor is definitely lower than the other guys that we did talk about and are about to talk about.
Yeah, that's fine. It is tougher, especially in this bottom half, because we talked about on the last show, kind of introing running backs, that like I feel like there's a changing of the guard at the running back position, and like there's a lot of players flipping from being good to being really good, great, and then there's some older guys like Aaron Jones who we don't know nothing about. We're not sure. And he could fall down boards quite significantly. Guys like Joe Mixon are taking hits this year. And, the guys that underperforms, like Najee Harris, is taking a hit in his rankings. And so it's just like there's a lot of younger guys moving up the boards. There's a lot of a lot of older guys moving down. Like Henry has been great, not really shown signs of slowing down. And we will talk about him on this show. But he's being ranked consensus on Fantasy Pros much lower than he typically gets ranked. So very interesting to see the shift in the dynamic, but that also creates a lot of chaos, a lot of havoc, and starts to cause people to rank guys all over the place, which is what's happening right now, and it's making it very difficult to figure out what guys you want and what guys you don't want. So anyway, let's talk about the 7th guy, the king, Derrick Henry. I don't know what to say anymore. I mean, how many years in a row do we be out on Henry?
Right. Yeah, I had Henry originally ranked where I had Walker. I originally had Henry at 8, and then I was like, I just can't keep doing this. He was RB4 last year, and he missed the game.
Yeah.
It's like every single year we're like, he's getting too old. He can't keep this up. And then he just does it again. It's we have two guys that we're like consistently wrong about. It's Travis Kelce and Derrick Henry. Like every single year, we're like, they're going to hit a cliff, the Max Kellerman cliff, and then it just doesn't happen. Derrick Henry is 29 years old, though. I mean, what running backs are playing at this level at 29 years old? I mean, there's no one on our list. I don't think that's even 28. Maybe is Eckler 28? Maybe Eckler's 28. Yeah. Outside of him,
something like that.
It's like 27 and under. And then Henry's 29. So it's like he's an old running back to be producing at this level at least. Yet here we are. I do think at the end of the day I'm going to move him down a spot, but you just can't argue with the production that he had. And it doesn't seem like it's slowing down. 349 carries, 1,500 yards, 13 touchdowns. He actually had a career high in targets and receptions this year. Not to mention the new GM. Do you want to know what the new GM said at the Combine?
Yeah.
He said that it's all fun and cute to play like the Warriors in September and October, but once you get to January, it's all about running the football and physicality. You know what that sounds like to me? They're going to run the ball with Derrick Henry 30 times a game again this year.
Yeah. I mean, hey, if it works, it works. The problem is how long can that man do that?
Like, I can't imagine that it's much longer.
And I mean, like, if he goes through another season with 300 plus carries, that's insanity.
Yeah, if last year wasn't his last great year, it's gonna be this year.
Yeah,
he's not having another great year out past. I think this year, I could see him having one more really good year where he's an RB1, and then that's it.
Yeah,
then he's off a cliff.
Right.
And even then, I think it could very well have been last year. Last year might have been his last year where he was great.
Yeah,
and this year we see the changing of guard, and he's not a top even 15 back.
If you see, the chair's getting a little hot over there, Rick.
I'm just saying it's the age thing, dude. But I also just said he can very well finish in the top 5. And
I think
continue doing what he's doing.
I think like if he's there and he's getting the running work that he got
last year, he's gonna be
fine. He's gonna be good.
Yeah.
But there is gonna come a point where he becomes Derrick Henry before Derrick Henry breakout. You know what I mean? And he starts falling apart. And it's like, when does that happen? He's been really good for 3 to 4 years now. So it's like, he broke out late. And I don't know that he got a whole ton of work in college. Like, he got a lot of work in college, but not like heavy on his legs. So like,
right.
If you just look at him as a player, like, this is when he would start falling off.
Yes, and I'm going to be honest. He actually, if you look at some of his other analytics, you could kind of see it. When he had his breakout season in 2018, he went from 4.2 to 4.9 yards per carry. Yeah. And then he averaged 5 yards carry. Then he averaged 5 yards carry. Then it was 4.2, and then last year was 4.4. So his yards per carry isn't at that same level when he initially broke out. And I think if it keeps going down, you're just not going to see him get the same amount of work.
Yeah. I am very, very concerned about Derrick Henry and what happens with him and all of that stuff. But then there's the other side of me that's like, how many years in a row am I going to do this? And then he's just going to rip my soul out. And those metrics you brought up, that's a great point. Like, you have to start looking at the advanced analytics and see where things are going. Because I do remember watching the Titans this year with Derrick Henry and being like, I don't have that same pop.
Yeah, he does. He still will, every once in a while he will have a big run still, but when it comes to just his every single down run,
yeah,
he doesn't hit the hole the same way, I feel like, that he did like 2 or 3 years ago. Like when he first had his breakout season, he was a monster. I don't feel like it's the same way. Like, he still has flashes of it, but he's kind of just like slower. It feels like he's at least a little slower. Sometimes he gets hit more and harder than he used to, I feel like it was rare to see Derrick Henry get hit and then just immediately go down when he first broke out. Now I feel like you see that more often. He's got a little more wear and tear, but we'll see.
Yeah, I agree. At some point, the crap's going to hit the fan for Derrick Henry, and I don't want to be the one that has him when that happens.
Yep, me either.
So he'll probably be a guy that I once again stay away from until we're right. But at some point, that will happen. Either that or he's going to be 40 and still proving us wrong.
Yep.
All right, let's talk about the next guy, who is Nick. I'm sorry. I'm looking at the wrong list again.
ETN.
We're at 9. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, Travis Etienne at 9. I had Etienne 9. Rick had Etienne 10, so he just slots right in there at 9. Not much disagreement here. Travis Etienne does scare the living poopies out of me. He
Me
makes
too.
me drop a turd in my pants sometimes. I will say, watching him this year and watching the amount of Jaguars games that I watched, he's not going. I would not be surprised if Jacksonville got a running back, a bulky guy that can carry the ball in absence of Travis Etienne. Say again?
That would scare me.
That would scare me too. They want him to be the guy, but he can't get past 15 carries on the ground, because if he does that, he just, like, I saw him in those games where he carried it 20 times. He's so small, he was getting up and he looked dazed. And I'm like, dude, this guy just looks done. Like, he looks like I remember watching Julio Jones catch his first pass with the Bucs. He got up so slow. Julio was like, why am I still doing this?
Yeah, yep.
Like, so slow. It was like, you had a whole offseason to recover. That first hit just doesn't hit the same, does it, Julio? That's what Travis Etienne is, except he's 22. So he was like, wow, what the hell am I doing? So I do think they're going to scale back his workload a little bit. I don't think that matters as long as they give him the ball through the air. It was frustrating as hell watching this football team and Doug Peterson give the ball through the air to Jamal Agnew or to, Jermichael Hasty or whoever the crap they had in that backfield that wasn't Travis Etienne. It was clear that they kind of wanted a second running back, and that's always kind of been Doug Peterson's MO. So it's like, he does like running the rock. He does like having a number one guy, but he also likes having a secondary guy to rip our soul out, especially in the red zone, which he did many times with Jamal Agnew. So for me at this point, I'm looking at Etienne and I'm like, I like him. I think he's a top 10 running back. I think his pass catching, just like, if he gets the ball through the air, he can ascend into that top, 8-7 conversation and be in the top 10 at least. I think he's going to be a solid second round running back for a lot of people. And I love Travis Etienne, but there is a lot of concern surrounding him for me, which is why I personally have him 9 at this point, and probably why Rick has him 10. So a lot of risk there. A lot more risk than the guys we were just talking about.
Yeah, he does. He has. I would say he's definitely riskier than some of the other guys that we were just talking about. But he also, he's got a very high ceiling as well. He's kind of similar to Kenneth Walker in that sense. I'll say some of the things I really like about Etienne. He's clearly explosive, has a lot of pass catching ability. That Jaguars offense was pretty good last year, and I think it's only going to get better with Calvin Ridley coming in there, and year 3 of Trevor Lawrence as well. So that offense has a chance to be, I could make the argument, potentially a top 5 offense in the NFL, if everything clicks with Doug Peterson, year 3 of Trevor Lawrence, and Calvin Ridley. So having a running back that, he might not be the full workhorse because, as you said, they might bring in a running back, but he might be close to a workhorse in a top 5 offense is usually a really good combination, and something that I want. Not to mention, he only had 5 total touchdowns last year. With like 250 touches. I think that probably goes up. I think we could see double-digit touchdowns from Etienne, and if that happens, he's definitely a lock for the top 10. So I'm still good with him being at number 10 and in the top 10. But yeah, the concerns you said are all valid. I do think they're going to bring in a running back, probably a hard hitter, and that might actually hurt his touchdown total. So we'll see we'll see how that plays out in the offseason, but I still like the player. I still like the upside. And I'd still take him on my teams.
Okay, yeah, there you go. Do you think he's going to end up being a second-round pick?
Yeah, I'd probably say late second.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about number 10 on consensus is Ramondre Stevenson of the New England Patriots. Number 10. This guy is probably the more likely player to move straight down my draft board. I currently have him at 11. Rick currently has him at 9, so he ranked him ahead of ETN. The reason why I say the most likely to move down my draft board as the offseason goes along is because I don't think Harris is returning to the Patriots. I've changed my mind. I think that he will. I mean, he might come back. I don't know. But the Patriots clearly saw Harris's contract and was like, listen, we don't really want to re-sign him on a money deal. Somebody else can deal with that. We're going to draft, Pierre Strong and Kevin Harris. And that's what they did. And they're probably going to draft a couple more guys this year in preparation for Ramondre to go next year. So, that's just what the Patriots do. I don't know what it's going to look like in the backfield. Like, I would imagine that the Patriots are going to go out and attempt, right, to find a pass-catching running back because that's what they want. They want a James White-type player like they had back in the past to pass catch. If that happens, that damages Mondre significantly because if Harris isn't here, he's going to get the goal line carries. He's going to get most of the carries between the tackles and outside the numbers and everything. He's going to get the ball. Mondre's going to get the ball. He's just not going to get it through the air. And if he doesn't get it through the air, PPR and half PPR leagues are kind of dead in the water for him. He basically just ends up like Damian Harris, who was between 11 and 12, if that makes sense. So very, very, very interesting at this point, seeing what happens with Ramondre Stevenson and the New England Patriots. But he makes me really, really nervous. So I have to see what happens in the offseason to see if he can, hold together the opportunity that he had last year, because I think people are going to go into this season and overdraft the crap out of Ramondre Stevenson, expecting him to get the ball, and then he's not going to be as good as people anticipated. So that's why I have him at 11. I actually think 11, 12, 13, 14 is probably where he'll land next year. If he gets the pass catching work, I think all bets are off. He could finish in the top 5, but it just depends on if he's out there on pass catching downs as well.
Yeah, I have him 9 right now, but I do agree he's somebody who I think I could drop down depending on what happens in the offseason. That's why I put him at 9, because if everything stays the same, even if they bring back Damian Harris and they don't really do anything, I still think I'd probably put Stevenson at 9, because last year, even in the games where Harris played, Stevenson wasn't as effective, but he still was their de facto pass catching back. And Mac Jones does utilize the running backs in the passing game, and the Patriots offense have always used running backs in the passing game. So, I mean, if he's going to get 88 targets again and 69, 70 catches, somewhere in that range, he's going to probably be a top 10 back in PPR. So that's why I have him there. And he's a good player as well.
Yeah.
He only had 6 touchdowns last year, kind of like ETN. I think if the Patriots have a good offseason, you could see that offense improving. And could lead to more touchdowns for Stevenson. But there's also a scenario where they let Harris walk and then they go get a pass catching back, which would hurt Stevenson's value because of his pass catching. Even though it might help him for like goal line and touchdowns, it would hurt his pass catching value. But I think the year he had, it's hard to ignore RB7 in PPR in an offense where that honestly wasn't even that good. So with a potentially improved offense, we could see a really good year out of Ramondre. But he's kind of like ETN in the sense where he's risky. He might even be more risky than ETN.
Mondre?
Yeah.
I think he's more risky than the guys behind him. To be honest with you, I think he's the most risky top 12 running back that we got.
That's fair.
I just, we provide an interesting perspective because we do follow our own team, the Patriots. Right. So we know what this team does. We know what they are. We hear the beat reporters all the time talking about what they want to do, and it's just so unsurprising. Like, Damian Harris has a big year, and everyone's like, Damian Harris, Damian Harris, Damian Harris, and then he gets drafted higher. Not as high as Mondre. Mondre is ridiculous, but like everyone was hyping up Damian Harris, and then they draft him high, and then this year he poops himself. So, like, this is just what happens with New England Patriots running backs, and if you buy into one, like, you get burned. And I want to buy in because I love the Patriots and I love the running back, and I'd like to have a freaking Patriot that has a fantasy value whatsoever, so I could root for a guy on my own team.
Right, there you go.
I spend the whole freaking year rooting against my own team so that a player who's playing the Patriots can have success, so I can freaking win.
Man, I remember Gronk, Edelman.
I know, we had those guys.
Tom Brady, Patriot running backs.
Yeah.
We used to have some fantasy value.
I still didn't draft Patriots back then. I was still scared.
But that's true.
So Mondre's 10. Number 11, Breece Hall. I have Breece 10. Rick has Breece 11. Sorry. So he has a little bit lower. I was actually going to rank Breece Hall slightly lower than I did, which is, crazy. But either way, I'm scared of Breece Hall.
Yeah.
Those injuries, man. We talked about it on the last show. Injuries at the running back position kick people in the lower extremities like no other position. And if a guy gets hurt, there's a better chance than not that he comes back next year and underperforms. And the problem here is that I don't even know that I like him at 11. Like, if he was on the board and he was the 11th running back off the board, which is usually early second round or middle second round, do I want to draft Breece Hall?
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know.
Especially, like, say I went Jamar, right? First round. I went Jamar Chase, like 5 or 6. And then the second round, at my turn in the second round, I said, all right, I'm going to go Breece Hall. Do I want Breece Hall as my number 1 running back? No. So where do I think he's going to land? It's probably more than likely that he lands between, like, 13 and 15, if I had to predict it. Mm-hmm. But there's always the chance that he does what he did last year and he breaks onto the scene and ends up being really good. The injury is the biggest concern for me. It's hard to rebound from ACL injuries. Did I say last week? I can't remember, but I think I heard somebody say that he sustained a similar injury to that of Saquon Barkley, and we all know how Barkley came back and played the following year. So,
right
at this point, for me, like, everything about him is, because the Jets offense looks like it's getting better. They're probably going to add a quarterback, which means good things for fantasy football. If they get Derek Carr, like, it still means good things for fantasy football. So, like, Breece could have much better fantasy numbers than he had last year, but it's just,
he had really, I mean, he was RB5, I think, when he tore his ACL, RB6.
He was really, really good. So, the injury concerns me, and that's why I'm kind of ranking him a little bit lower. I think, maybe 13 or 15 is a little bit strong on my side, but he just scares me. He scares me. Like I think there's definitely ceiling there. There's definitely the ability for him to finish in the top 5 if he just shakes off this ACL injury, comes back, and he ends up being fine. But there's also reports that I've heard that say that he's not even going to be ready for week 1. So, like,
yeah,
like, if he's not ready for week 1, then you're also burning yourself there. You're going to be drafting a guy who's coming off injury and might miss 3 or 4 weeks into the season. So this is just it's tough with Breece Hall. Love Breece Hall, but I just don't know if I can invest that high draft capital in a guy who is, hurt and on a football team that might not even have a quarterback. So,
right, yeah, no, I mean, I love the player too. We know, like, especially how high I was on him pre-draft, then when he got drafted by the Jets, and then, in redraft, I was a little nervous about it, but I ended up taking him in the home league.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've been on the Breece Hall train, but that being said, if he's not ready to go week 1, he's probably not even going to be in my top 12. I mean, Dobbins scares me. The injuries scare me. As you talked about, like, injuries are such a concern at that position, especially the ACL. And I think I want to say he tore his ACL and he had another leg injury on the same play. It was one of those, like, tears and sprains sort of thing, or partial tear in another spot of his knee. Like, it was a bad injury. And there is going to be real concern if he's going to be back week 1. And if he comes back, how effective is he going to be? You know, he might have a couple weeks where he's really not that good, and it might take him half the season to get back up to speed. And if that's the case, as much as I like the player, I don't want anything to do with him. So having him at 11, honestly, might even be high. It might be high. We'll see how the offseason goes. You know, if all things go well and he's ready to go week 1, and you know, people say he had no setbacks and he's healthy, he's ready to go, then I'm okay with him at 11. Because that, even if all things go well, we don't know how he's going to play,
respond or play on that.
Right. Even if he plays, we don't know how well he's going to play right away. So that's best case scenario for him, which is unfortunate because I told you, I think before the show, like if Breece Hall didn't get hurt, I think I'd probably have him in my top 5. I think I would have him in that Eckler Jacobs tier.
Do you like him over Kenneth Walker?
No, because of the injury. I think if
but I mean, like, if that was not a factor.
Yeah, I think I would.
Interesting.
It'd be very close.
I disagree. I like Kenneth Walker better, but
yeah,
is what it is.
It'd be very close. But I think I would.
I don't disagree with you. I think it would be close as well.
But yeah, because the injury just throws everything off for him.
Yeah. So I mean, you know, we'll see in a couple of months. I just, like I said, bad offenses and injuries all together at one time is not good. So we'll have to see what happens with the Jets and how they, you know, if they get Rodgers, that changes the whole offense part of it. It's going to be a lot better, but you know, we have to see. So let's move on to the final guy in the top 12, and it's Joe Mixon, ranked at 12.5. I have Joey Mixon at 12. Rick has Joey Mixon at 13. So one spot higher. So right now, we're not too far off on that guy. I thought Rick had him originally at 15, right?
No, I thought about it, but
you thought about it.
Yeah.
So lots of concerns surrounding Joe Mixon. Still think he's a fantastic player. I think he's going to be on the Bengals when the season starts. Rick brought up a report which he can get into when he talks about Joe, about him possibly being cut or you know, them getting rid of him, which would make sense if they were trying to re-sign T. Higgins.
Right.
But if Joe Mixon is on the Bengals, I think he's fine. I'd have to see where he ends up going if he were to leave. But usually, if a running back leaves their breakout team, it usually leads to bad things in the future. So I don't know what things look like for Joe Mixon. This is a guy that he's always hovering somewhere around the top 10. And the big issue with Joe Mixon is that if he does end up like going into a position where he doesn't, he doesn't go back to the Bengals, you know, what landing spots and what situations work for him, and does that replicate a top 12 season for him in fantasy football? But if he just goes back to the Bengals and he stays healthy, like, they're going to give him the rock. They're going to throw it to him through the air. He's going to get the numbers that he usually gets, and he's going to end up being a top 12 running back in fantasy football, and you're not going to regret drafting him. So there's no concerns for me in terms of injury or play for him, but it's really just more or less a combination of, not knowing his situation with the Bengals and age. Those are the two main things for me. So that's why he's 12, and he could even move. He could even move down. Like I might move Najee ahead of him. I might move Dalvin Cook ahead of him. Cook might also be on the move. And then you have Tony Pollard who broke out, and Zeke's like, I want to come back, and the Cowboys are like, kind of like, we love you, Zeke, but we'll have you back. That's kind of what they're doing right now. So, I don't think Zeke causes any problems for Tony Pollard, but definitely, when you get past that 12, I would say the top 10, it kind of starts getting mixed together in terms of these running backs and what guys are there. But Joe Mixon, 12 for me right now, could change.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Mixon makes me very nervous. First of all, he's kind of a boring player anyway, especially for fantasy. You don't really see a ton of production. But even in real football, he hasn't really even been that great. I mean, his yards per carry this year was 3.9. I mean, that's disgusting. The things that keep him going is his passing game and the fact that he's in that Bengals offense.
Yeah.
That's why he was RB10. But there was a report, as you kind of mentioned, from PFF actually, that said Joe Mixon has been identified as a cut candidate. If they have to make room for T. Higgins or other players, that they would be willing to cut Joe Mixon, which I think is very fascinating. The running back free agent market too could be pretty solid. Damian Harris, David Montgomery, and there's also been a report that said the Eagles are unlikely to bring back Miles Sanders. So, which I don't know if you saw that,
lots of RB movement.
Yeah, so I wouldn't be shocked if the Bengals did bring in, maybe not one of those guys because they would have to pay him, but if they brought in a running back to kind of compete with Joe Mixon, and not to mention his age, as you said, I don't think he's quite at like at a point where you have to really be concerned with his age, but it's getting close. I think he'll be 27 this year, so it's usually kind of the last really, really elite years for running back is like that 27, 28 mark. So we'll see. And he's got a lot of, unlike Derrick Henry, I feel like he's got a lot more tread on his tires. So we'll see. But yeah, Mixon kind of makes me a little nervous. But at the same time, if everything stays the same, he was RB10 last year?
Yeah.
So like if they don't do anything, they keep Mixon again and they just run it back. It's kind of hard to just ignore him. He's still the running back on an elite offense that's going to get a lot of work. So he's still going to be like a top probably 12 guy if that's the case. But he does make me a little nervous. Yeah.
It's very interesting that they would be making him a cap casualty and cutting him. And
I thought that was very interesting too.
It's very interesting. And you know, like I said, there's a lot of like, you know, the Eagles might let Miles Sanders go. The Colts, the Vikings might let Dalvin Cook go, right? I think that the Buffalo Bills would be a great landing spot for anyone, but I think they're in the market for a running back. And if they've tried drafting guys in the past, James Cook, you know, who's the other guy? Can't remember his name. Devin Singletary. And like they've tried drafting guys, it hasn't really worked for them. You know, if Joe Mixon's available, Dalvin Cook's available, Miles Sanders available, I think the Bills will be one of those teams that goes out and gets them. But, you know, do the Vikings need, you know, now a running back, or do they stick with Alexander Madison? Is the same conversation for a team like the Eagles? If they let Miles Sanders walk, are they trying to bring
the Bears too? If they let Montgomery walk, are they going to just roll with Herbert, or are they going to get somebody?
They love Khalil Herbert. They love him. Watch
out. I know. Did you
Watch
see that report?
Yeah, they love him.
That coach said like, oh, he's got game-breaking ability or something like that.
Just watch out for Mr. Freaking Khalil Herbert. Yeah. So, and then like I said, Joe Mixon's on the move. You know, does he go to a team like the Eagles?
Yeah.
Does he go to a team like the Minnesota Vikings?
You know, another team too, like the Saints. If Alvin Kamara gets suspended and he's already like 27, 28, like he's not even on our list.
For rankings,
like. Yeah, I mean, and reason being, he's old and he's probably going to get suspended.
Yep.
The Saints might be in the market for running back.
Yep. So lots of teams, and then you got the draft and all kinds of stuff. And you know, like the running back position is so, like I said, there's a lot of volatility this year with the running back position and what things look like and players moving around, and it's just it means that some of these younger running backs under contract are going to be ranked higher because they do have, you know, slightly better opportunity or slightly better upside. So things are definitely going to change with this list.
Right.
Especially for the running backs. Other positions, wide receiver, that's going to be consensus for me and Rick. It's going to be
probably.
Probably
there'll be a couple change-ups, but it won't be, I don't think, anything crazy.
But anyway, there is your 2023 fantasy football top 12 running backs from us to you. We will go through our running backs again at some point in the future. Be sure to check out the wide receivers next week on those shows, and have a wonderful weekend watching the XFL, everyone. Bye.
See you.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube, and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.